So today we're going to be installing a couple meters in my 71 F250 and I want to show you guys what comes in the package. And this is made by Autometer. These, in my opinion, are the world's best meters you guys can buy. There's a ton out there that are cheap, but when it comes to getting your reading on your truck, in this case a vacuum, or in here I got a fuel gauge, don't go cheap. You want something that's going to be accurate and it's going to last. And besides, this is the only meter I know of that's made here in the USA. And they have a license for a lot of other vehicles like Ford and Chevy. So they put their products in those vehicles. All right, so this one is a vacuum, or what they call a boost meter gauge. And this basically monitors your vacuum as you're driving. So you can tell a lot about your vehicle performance and problems simply by looking at the vacuum. In fact, this is, in my opinion, one of the most important meters you guys should put in your vehicle. Or most people generally install a voltmeter or amp meter, or water pressure and oil pressure. And yes, those are all important here, but you can tell a lot about your performance by installing a boost or a vacuum gauge. All right, so in this package, you're gonna get this clear hose. And what this means is that you're gonna need to connect this to one of your vacuum lines. And I'll show you guys where I'm gonna connect my hose to. It comes with a light that goes in the back of the meter. And I'm gonna be replacing this bulb, the regular incandescent light bulb, with an LED light bulb. So you can have a choice of green, white, or red. And then it comes with, this is kind of nice, it comes with these rubber grommets that goes in your firewall. So when you're running your hose through, you're not gonna be, have to worry about chafing along the tube here and cutting a hole in here, which will give you a false reading. 2 compression fittings and your hardware. So this is gonna be pretty simple setup. So just the other night, I installed a coolant temperature sensor in the truck. So I thought, you know what, let me just pause and show you guys how easy it is to hook up these important gauges in your car or truck. All right, so let's get started. All you can do is you can plug in your light here. Then in the back of here, we'll connect the hose to this compression fitting. It'll go here, and the other end will go to the actual vacuum line that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. And then in the back here are just simply connectors to connect to your, in my truck I've got a 3 round bezel bracket. That's where this is going to fit into. So it's pretty simple. Now this tab right here comes like that from the factory intentionally, so that it doesn't ruin the actual dial, because most dials are set to like the very bottom 0, so zeroed out right there. So you want to make sure you pull that out before you put everything together. So this is just for shipping purposes, and you don't want to pull that out until you're ready to finalize your install inside your vehicle. All right, and I forgot to mention that it does come with this plastic T connector for your vacuum. So this comes off the carburetor and into your advanced vacuum into your distributor. So I cut it right here, and I put these 2 fittings together on this plastic T. Then I'm going to run this through my firewall and into the cab. So forgot to mention that. And let me show you where it's all going to come in. So like I said, this is where I install my water. I'm going to put my boost right here and my fuel gauge right here. You don't want to go with the oil pressure sensors, because I rebuilt this whole dash, but for some reason my temperature sensor is not working, but my oil pressure gauge is working, so I don't need another one. To do this, you do have to take out this right here, your instrument cluster, and just held by just 6 screws here and there. So it's pretty simple. And so I just stretched out the tubing, and it's about 10 feet long, so that's plenty. All right, so they recommend that we use some thread tape on all the fittings. Okay, so you just want to make sure that you put it on going clockwise, and try not to get it over the hole, because you don't want to obstruct the airway. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, so when you take these nuts off, there's a compression fitting right here. Okay, so that goes inside. Make sure you don't lose that. Otherwise, you're not gonna have a tight, airtight fit. Okay, and then don't forget to put it on your plastic T connector. All right, guys, so let me show you guys how this all fits in here on the bench so that you guys can see exactly how it goes before we go under the hood. So this is how it comes in a box. So when you undo this, you want to make sure that you don't lose that brass ferrule right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your one end of your tubing and you can slide it through this side right here with a smooth surface. Push in and it's going to slide right in just like that. You got to slide this ferrule in here, but the problem is this ferrule and the tubing is almost exact same diameter. So let me show you guys a little secret. So this ferrule has to slide on this tubing, otherwise it's not going to work. So what you want to do is grab a lighter and get the tube a little warm. Okay, you don't want to melt it, just a little warm, and then quickly take your finger and then push it down in a circle. And uh-oh, I'm bleeding. There. Sorry about the blood, you guys. So now it fits in here, no problem. Okay. Take your side cutter and then just cut it off. Because when you burn the end, the end of the tube might have closed a little bit. So that's why you want to cut it off so you got a nice clean line here. Okay, so now you can slide the ferrule into this nut. And then you want to grab your other end, push it through as far as it'll go, which is, it's going to stop right there. It's not going to go any further. You want to come in here and tighten it up. So that's the key. Use a lighter. Okay, there we go. And then we can take the other end and then feed it through the cab. So in my truck, I've got this hole right here where the speedometer goes. And what's good thing about this hole right here is the edges are tapered, so it's not sharp. And it gives me a huge access to feed this, feed the tubing through. Now, the one bad thing about these kind of tubing is that they don't unravel very nicely. So you gotta be very careful that you don't kink it. Okay. All right, so here it is coming through here. So these tubing can be a little difficult to work with because it's got, you know, it's all wound up like this. What might be a good idea to do right now is try to unwind it best you can without kinking the line and start putting in some zip ties. That way you have a nice clean line going here all the way to the firewall. Okay, let me pull some through. So this is where the kinks can get kinked up right here. So just be very careful as you're unraveling this. Something like that. So now you can start hooking up your gauge now that you got your tube inside the firewall without any kinks. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is feed this tubing through the mounting bracket first. But before you do that, you gotta make sure that your mounting bracket, you slide this tube through the mounting bracket first. Okay, and then go ahead and connect your hose. And as you tighten the nut down on the meter, if you feel like tube is spinning as you're tightening this nut down, just back off on this compression nut. And just get it snug, like that. Okay, then come back and tighten down on the compression nut. I got a small crescent wrench. And you just wanna make sure that compression nut is on there nice and snug. Okay, that should be good enough. So on the back of here, now you can slide your gauge through and slide in the black plastic mounting bracket. This is the hard part because you can't really see. And you got your little star nut here, or star washers, and then your nut, okay, and one on the other side. Okay, so before you tighten it down, you want to make sure that your gauge is exactly the way you want it, up and down, nice and straight. Okay, and that's pretty much it. And you just want to make sure that your tubing here is out of the way. I'll put a zip tie right here. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and tighten up our nuts nice and snug. Again, when you're tightening this, your hose should not spin. If it is, just back off on this compression nut right there. There you go. And again, nothing crazy. Okay, now come back with the compression nut and then go ahead and tighten her up. And what we're doing is basically squeezing that ferrule between the compression nut and this guy right here. Okay, that should be good. Let's go start the engine and see what happens. All right, for the moment of truth here. Okay, so here we go. Let me turn it on. Okay, there you go. When you're not pushing down on the gas, that meter should go to 0, and then as you give gas, it should build vacuum. And if you look on the left side, it says VAC, vacuum. And that's exactly what you want. And you want between 15 and 0. Because that's a sweet spot.